I've heard from a director recently that he didn't want a lot of talking heads. You can read that in a book. That's what you said this morning.
Oh, yeah. I was like, who is this guy?
Right.
I want to see his movies.
Yeah, that was you this morning.
Yeah, no, that's my whole MO, man. That's how I've been making movies for 15 years. I feel like, when you're tackling a subject like the Rolling Stones or Kurt Cobain, or these epic moments in history, like I did this movie June 17th, 1994 for the 30 for 30 series. Sorry, I was doing it.
See what I mean?
When you're dealing with these epic moments in time, I always feel like, man, you can come on, books are like 400 pages. If you want history, get a book. When you go to a movie, you should get an experience. You can't get a history in 90 minutes. A 90-minute film breaks down to like a 10-page book, so don't try to do what you can't do. And when you're dealing with an artist who works in visual and oral mediums, then the best thing we can do as films is create a cinematic adaptation of that subject.
100%.
And so, that's basically been my mantra. So that's why I got into documentary film. That's been my sort of focus since 2000.
Definitely want to go backwards with you. I interviewed you in 2008 for Chicago 10.
And I probably talked about the Cobain film then.
And at the end of our interview, I asked you what you were doing next, and you said to me, "I'm getting ready to do a Kurt Cobain documentary, and I just saw the footage. Courtney showed it to me, and people won't believe it." And and you probably don't remember, but I was like freaking out because it meant a lot to me. And you said it'll be ready in about 4 years. And I'm like, okay. And so cut to, it's now 7 years, whatever it is. It's a little bit of a journey. So needless to say, I was fucking excited when I heard this was going to be premiering here. So have you been working on it like nonstop in that time?
No. I always find it so funny because this truly was and you just proved what I've been telling people, this is in this 7-8 year journey. 6 of those years were wrangling the rights, and I'm not that deaf that it'd take me 8 years in the edit room to pull off a film. It was 6 years of wrangling the rights, and there were a lot of rights holders and everything. And at one point we were on hold for 2 years while things were settled in courts between Courtney and Francis. So we couldn't even do anything during that time. And but once all that stuff got cleared, things started moving, and I started work pretty much once Crossfire Hurricane was done, which was the end of 2012. Sometime in 2013 we started moving in on this.
Obviously you were given a lot of control, a lot of assets, a lot of stuff. Was there anything that you had access to that ultimately someone said, no, you can't use this?
No. I mean, look, Courtney didn't see the film till Monday night. When we were at Deluxe, it was a little too late for changes then. And there was stuff that some of the family members would prefer wasn't in the film. That they're not happy is in the film, stuff of Kurt on heroin. I understand that. I would not want to see my son depicted that way, and I completely understand that. But my responsibility was to Kurt and to Francis, and that's who I felt I was working for or trying to make the film for. And so, no, the answer, the short or long rambling answer is no. There is nothing there's stuff that a couple family members had asked for, but it's in the movie.
The movie right now is about 2 hours and 20-something minutes. Is it?
Is it that long?
No.
It's 132.
132.
So it's a little over 2 hours.
Yeah.
How long was your first cut of the film?
224.
Oh, so only a little bit longer. What was the not 8 minutes that you cut out?
It was just frames of every scene. We didn't cut any scene out. We just, we'd never trimmed any, we hadn't started trimming yet and taking the sort of air out of things. And so, yeah, we just cut the fat.
When a lot of people are going to be seeing it most people are going to see this thing on HBO.
No. Most people are going to see this in cinemas, man. This is going to be probably the most widely distributed theatrical documentary in 2015.
Okay.
Outside of America.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. Universal Pictures is releasing it all over the world Universal Pictures is aggressively releasing the film all over the world after the Berlin Film Festival this year.
I have to say, I can see this doing very well because I can see it doing very well. But I want to go backwards for a second. I saw the screening this morning at the Temple Theater. I've been to Sundance for 8 years, 7 years, whatever. I've never been to the Temple Theater. It was easily the best sounding movie I've ever heard at Sundance in terms of the volume and the presentation. How much were you tweaking volume or demanding it was going to be super loud?
Well, that's funny you should ask that. That we toned that down tonight, so that was way lower than it was at the premiere screening the other night.
Really? Because it was loud this morning.
Oh, if at the press screening they had that at 8. What did he set that at 8.1? I don't even want to know what it sounded like in there at the press screening. It must have been a horror show. The film's meant to be loud, man. And I was when we were. It was mixed by the Academy Award-winning mixer of Schindler's List, Steve Peterson. And Steve's, a little older than me, and I remember during songs like Endless Nameless or I Hate Myself and Want to Die, Steve would try to, keep it down here, and I'd go, out of roll. If I could go, hey, Steve, and he'd go, yeah, that meant it had to go up. If you could hear my voice, right. It's not loud enough for me, man. And then eventually those guys would try to psych me out. I'd go hey, Steve, and he wouldn't turn around. I knew what he was doing.
Right.
But it didn't matter because I was like, oh, he's like, if you go any louder, it's going to be an assault. And I was like, I hate myself and I want to die. It's not a cocktail lounge music, man. So we wanted, but the sound design, I love sound design because, especially on a film like this, where Kurt gave us so many wonderful sound effects to play with, and montages. A lot of Kurt's sound montages. The thing at the beginning of the film, hello, testing 1, 2, 3. All that shit. It's all Kurt's Montage of Heck stuff, and I find that we spent, for a documentary, we spent 3.5 weeks on stage 9 of Warner Brothers, which is where Chris Nolan mixes. We went pretty...
Yeah, but I got to tell you something. It sounds fucking good. There you go.
Dude, love you. Thank you, man.
Yeah,
love you.
It really does. I will say that I'm a huge fan of his. I've listened to all the music, and I know I've read books, and I will tell you that your film really does present him in a light that I've never seen. And the footage of Courtney and their relationship and all that stuff, it really does, I think, will change people's perception. Did you always know that was going to happen once you saw the footage?
Yeah, well, I knew that look, one thing that I knew was critical was that the audience was able to understand why Kurt loved Courtney. That if the audience hated Courtney, the whole movie wouldn't work. You see, because ultimately, spoiler alert, don't watch the next part. To understand the betrayal and why that betrayal would hit him so hard, you have to understand how much he had invested into that relationship. So it was, I remember early on, and I'm a sucker for a love story. Sure. The kid sees in pictures like the Bob and Allie love story. And I knew that it was important, and I saw Courtney in a different light. When I saw the home movie footage, she wasn't dominating Kurt. Kurt was going toe to toe with her, and they were so in love with each other. That's not you can't make that shit up. Sure. But it was that 23-year-old love, that fiery, passionate, burning love. And that was a shock to me because I knew Kurt and Courtney the way the public knew Kurt and Courtney. So I found that stuff to be totally revelatory. I found in that footage 2 young adults who were madly in love with each other and were, and with Kurt, look, the whole movie is really about Kurt's pursuit of a family. And being in a band was part of that. He never had a family, and that's all he wanted. All he wanted was, and you hear it from Jenny, the stepmom, the first thing she says is he wanted a family. And as you go through the film, you see that I think that in my script for the film, there were chapter headings called Recreating the Family, Chapter 1, Recreating the Family, Chapter 2, so that when he meets Chris, or when he starts playing Nirvana, in my notebooks it says Recreating Family Unit 1. When he meets Tracy, Recreating Family Unit 2. When he meets Courtney, Recreating Family Unit 3. That to me seemed to be the underlining drive, motivation through Kurt's life, not professionally, but personally. And really that is about being accepted and understood and having someone who's nurturing you and feeling a sense of nurturing. And Yeah.
Is it, and this is like a sort of, people who know the story of Kurt know a lot of the facts about what happened in Rome and what ultimately happened at the, how he took his own life. And so I'm going to get into a specific about the Rome story. Do you think, is that true that he found out that Courtney might have cheated, or is it just random? Do you know what I mean with that, when that happened? With him?
The night in Rome, Kurt attempted to take his own life because of his belief that Courtney had been unfaithful.
So he'd heard through the grapevine that something like that, or that was just like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Because in the film I didn't.
Well, I never asked Chris about that. Kurt's reaction to it. Well, there's only one person in the world who knows. It's Courtney.
No, I mean, I was just, because for me, I'd never associated or knew that connection. Between,
oh, no?
Yeah, no, I didn't realize that was the reason why, well, maybe one of the reasons why that
Oh,
happened.
well, you
in Rome.
see, I'll tell you something that's not in the film. That's my little theory, which is, the footage towards the end of the film where they're in the bathtub together and she says, I'm really happy right now. And Kurt goes, me too. That was shot on Christmas 1993. So that was just 3.5 months before he died, or 3 months before Rome. After that, shortly after that, Kurt had to go on a European tour. And he hadn't been away from Courtney and Francis, I don't think, for any extended period of time at all up to that point. And so there were a number of things going on. He was in Europe, away from his family for the first time, in God knows how long. He didn't want to be there. When you're going from country to country, you can't really bring your heroin with you. So just getting smack when you're going on like you're in a different country every day is difficult. So I think he was on methadone, or I think he just was feeling good. And then Courtney comes into Rome. But listen, I don't like getting into that stuff's too minor, and I didn't want to make a movie about death.
No, 100%.
And so I feel, as I'm even saying that's like TMI, like it's because that gets into the behind the music sort of.
100%.
It's a movie that's not about facts; it's about emotion.
100%. One of the things that's really great is the way you mix the footage, the animation, just the way it's all put together. Was that always the template that you were setting out to make? And maybe could you talk about what was for you the most challenging aspect of making a mixed media film?
Sure. Listen, I'll be candid. I was not thrilled with the look of the animation in Chicago 10. I liked the acting, the character acting in Chicago 10, but I never really liked the look. So I was a little nervous going into this about I knew I had to use animation because I had so many amazing audio components. This Kurt's never before heard audio autobiography in which he describes losing his virginity for the first time was like, hey, listen, if I could, I would have gone 4 minutes of black there, and just listen to Kurt's voice, but we're making a movie. So there were two different components of the animation. There were the need to visualize elements that only exist in audio, right? And then there was bringing Kurt's art to life. So the first part of that was cell animation, and I'd seen a short film that won pretty much every short animation award last year called Junkyard by Hisko Husling. And as soon as I saw Hisko's cell, because I'd been looking for over 2 years for the right animation, and since I saw Hisko's work, it felt very Cobain-esque and painterly and formal in a way that I wanted those moments to have, that they were not Kurt's. This isn't Kurt's drawings in those moments. And it was important to have that distinction a little bit. The same way with the interviews. The way the interviews are not shot to blend into the rest of the film. The interviews are shot in a much more formal construction. The interviews were actually, just to go off subject for 1 sec, I don't know if the idea for the interviews was inspired by the movie Lenny, the Bob Fosse film, and the simplicity of just having the mom, the manager, and the girlfriend, and just a few people, not 100 people, just a few people intimately describing the life. And if you notice in the movie that the film travels from day to night through the course of the interviews, which was all designed in the lighting setup, and questions were specific to different moods and whatnot. Back to your question, the biggest challenge was the journals. Stefan Nadelman, who's an amazing motion effects artist, essentially moved into our office for about a half a year to develop the style that we would use for the journals. I wanted it to feel analog. I wanted it to feel like we were shooting the journals off of Super 8, but we weren't shooting it off Super 8, we were doing it digitally. So that meant trying to grain. The grain became a weapon. How much grain, what percentage of grain do you put into a shot before it's too much or just keeps the right amount of texture? Is the writing out, or is it already there when we get there? Like, I would approach, and Stefan and I would approach a text as if we just walked onto a set. And there are a myriad of ways that you could approach that. But what is it we want to communicate in that moment? So the paper itself, the dirting of the paper, the journal paper, sometimes there would be food stains on it. Sometimes the paper would be more weathered. I mean, all of that was
100%.
Controlled and part of the narrative of the film. I mean, I get asked a lot of, I did the Kids Stays in the Picture, which for all practical purposes was probably one of the first sort of animated documentaries or, photo animation, whatever. And I think the mistake a lot of people do is they farm out their directors have this stuff where they know that stuff has to get animated, so they send it off to a visual effects house and they animate it over there and they bring it back, and it's like, it's disconnected. And so Stefan and I were working we're in the same building, and we're like, we were redoing our effects up to the last on our last day in color. He was in the office, so we need 2% less grain on that, 1% less grain. So the light's too hard in there. So it was, the idea with the journals was to tell a story through texture and through lighting and through grain.
Sure. I got to just stop you there and say, it really looks like it's part of the film, and it looks like the artistic decisions, it all meshes. You know what I mean? But I'm almost out of time, and I want to touch on another subject. One of the things, as I said, I've read a lot of stuff on Kurt. It was amazing to see Tracy on screen, and I want to know, how difficult was it to get her to talk? And also, I don't think a lot of people realize the importance she had in Kurt's life in making him a musician, because she supported him when no one else was doing it.
Yeah, Tracy Marander was the hardest interview to get for the film. We were reaching out to her for, I think, 8 months. She never picked up the phone. She never called us back. I mean, it was really, really difficult. And I felt it was critical for the film that you couldn't understand the Kurt's travels through life without understanding Tracy. One thing we had access to that was really also striking was, for some reason, some of Tracy's journals were also in the same facility that we found Kurt's journals in. And so those letters from Tracy to Kurt, nobody's ever seen those things before. And you saw how much love she had for him when you see her letters. And it's lists of things to do, wake up, kiss Kurt, and there was so much love. And you could see it today, 20, 30, 25, almost 30 years since they were together. She's still haunted, and she still is, you could see, has such a strong feeling towards Kurt. And so for me, one of the most, there's a scene in the Kids Stays in the Picture where Bob invites Ali McGraw to his house for the first time, and then they end up getting married at the end of the scene, and it's swelling music and water is pouring on. The scene where we meet Tracy, and it's to I think it's Lithium. It's an instrumental version of Lithium, and it just keeps rising and rising and rising until you get to the journals at the end. To me, that's it's such a cathartic moment, because it's the moment where Kurt finally has found someone to take care of him, and to love and to be loved. And it's really, I don't know how we would have finished the film without her.
I agree. I got to wrap with you, but I have to ask you, as a fan of your work, what are you working on? What's coming up next?
Now, see, I'm afraid if I tell you, it won't come out till 2020.
Well,
so
that part's true, but you might as well.
I'm not working on anything, man. To be honest, I put everything I had into this film. I left nothing. There was nothing left, and I'm not Alex Gibney. I'm not one of these people who do 17 films at a time.
Right.
I sit in the edit room every day. I'm at the office from 8 a.m. to 1 a.m. 6 days a week, if not 7 days a week, agonizing over everything. A grain, I talked to my sound person, 0.1 dB can crush me. If we're off 0.1, nobody else notices.
Sure.
But you have this film in your head, and James could tell you, I've gone back and recolor corrected it. I recolor corrected and remixed the entire film when I was at Deluxe on Monday, I saw I went to QC the DCP. This is Monday. The festival is starting in 3 days, and I went back the next day and remixed from scratch and recolor corrected every shot.
I'm sure people love you behind the scenes.
Everybody who works with me hates me because right, James, is that fair to say? No, okay, no, that's not fair to say. Listen.
You're a perfectionist.
No, but it's painful. You get it's painful. It hurts because we have such limited ways to communicate. Color grading, sound design,
Sure.
framing of the interview, and how we're going to shoot these archival elements. So that's it. So man, that stuff's valuable.
I got to tell you, as much of your heart and soul you put in, you make really good movies. So I appreciate you burying your soul into your art.
Thanks, man.
I'm going to leave it there and say I know people are going to love this movie. I speak for Nirvana fans and Kurt fans. Thank you so much for making it.
Thanks, man.
For real.